We're kicking the useless people out of the family. You're first, my brother Eric sneered, glass of wine in hand like he owned the place. My parents didn't object. My sister laughed and said, the only thing you're good for is your money. You can Venmo us on your way out. I looked at all of them. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't break. I simply said, perfect. Then start packing your things, because this is my house. You could hear forks hit china. I just bought the house a week earlier. Cash. Not a mansion, just a classic 5-bedroom I renovated quietly over the last 6 months. I let them host the family reunion here because I wanted to see how far they'd go now that they thought I had nothing left to give. Turns out pretty far. Eric had been the golden boy since birth. I paid for his MBA. I covered my sister's rent for 3 years. When Dad's business collapsed, I wired $68,000 into his account with no questions asked. And Mom? She said I owed her my life. But the moment I stopped giving, I became disposable. Tonight was a test. I let them think I was still broke. Still rebuilding after I left my toxic startup job. I wore my old hoodie. I arrived late. I even brought grocery store cake. And that's when they struck. But what they didn't know was that every inch of this house, every chair they were sitting on, I owned it. Now I was done being useful. I was ready to be honest. And what came next would change everything. Eric's face dropped first. You're joking, he muttered. Nope, I replied, walking toward the fireplace where I'd stacked the house deed, fully notarized in my name. Check the name on the title, Eric. He grabbed it with shaky fingers. I watched him scan the document like a man searching for hope on a page already lost. Then Mom stood up, voice trembling with fake authority. You tricked us. You let us move in. You said nothing. I looked her dead in the eye. You're right. I said nothing. And it's the only reason you were kind to me for 2 months. They didn't know I had been planning this moment since the day they told me I was just a wallet with legs. I'd moved across the country, built a business from scratch, and kept it quiet. I wore cheap clothes. Drove a beat-up Camry. I played poor just to see who they were when I had nothing to give. Now I knew. You used us, my sister snapped. That's manipulation. Manipulation? I laughed quietly. You sold my childhood bike on Facebook Marketplace when I couldn't pay rent in college. Silence. No one denied it. This house was my reset button. And tonight? I was wiping the slate clean. You have until Friday to pack, I said. I'll even pay for your U-Haul. Marcus, my dad finally spoke, voice low. You can't kick out your own blood. I'm not, I said calmly, walking toward the door. I'm just taking my peace back. And as I left the room, I heard my sister whisper something that made my blood go cold. He doesn't know about the trust fund. I froze at the doorway. Trust fund? I turned slowly. What did you just say? My sister smirked like a child caught holding stolen candy. Oops. Eric tried to wave it off. Don't listen to her. She's just being dramatic. But something cracked open inside me, a puzzle piece falling into place. The way Mom once told me, some things are just handled differently with Eric. The time Dad said, that accounts for emergencies, not for you. How they'd always been vague when I asked about Grandma's will after she passed. I thought Grandma left something for all of us, I said, staring at them. She said it herself before she died. Stop digging, Mom snapped, but the panic in her voice betrayed her. I walked past them and straight into the office where Dad kept old papers. I didn't ask permission. 10 minutes later I found it. A copy of the will. One paragraph sealed it. A trust in the amount of $187,000 is to be split equally between my grandchildren, Marcus and Eric Hamilton. My name was there. Clear as daylight. I never saw a cent. My stomach churned. They had lied. For years. Let me bleed for this family, pay their debts, cover tuition while they kept my inheritance, the one my grandmother specifically left for me, locked away. I walked out of the office, will in hand, and placed it on the table. No one said a word. Until I said, you didn't just lose your free ride. I looked at each of them. You're about to lose everything. They didn't even try to deny it. Dad just sat there, eyes fixed on the will like it had betrayed him. Mom's voice cracked. It wasn't the right time, Marcus. You were always off doing your own thing. Eric needed help. He was struggling. Struggling? I said, my voice low. You mean dropping out of college 3 times? Starting 5 failed startups, with Grandma's money while you told me there wasn't any left. My hands were shaking, but not from rage. From restraint. You used my grief, I said. You knew I wouldn't ask questions. I trusted you. Eric stood up. It's not like you needed the money. You're doing fine now. I snapped. Fine? I slept in my car for 6 months, Eric. Ate ramen noodles in a gas station parking lot while you were posting photos from Cancun. I built everything I have without a dime from this family, because you stole my start. Silence fell heavy. I pulled out my phone, opened the email draft I'd written the night I suspected something was off. The one addressed to Grandma's estate attorney. You have 48 hours, I said, sending it. If that money isn't returned with interest, I'll file for fraud, breach of trust, and pursue criminal charges. Against all three of you. Mom whispered something about family. I laughed. This stopped being a family when you started treating me like a bank you could rob without consequences. As I walked upstairs to pack their things, Eric shouted, "You think you're better than us?" I didn't even turn around. No, I said. I know I am. They thought I was bluffing. Until the estate lawyer called them. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Dad, stumbling, stammering, begging me to keep it in the family. That, "We made mistakes, son, but this doesn't have to ruin us." But it was already too late. The attorney confirmed the trust had been illegally accessed. Grandma's original directive was clear, and the misuse? That was provable fraud. Civil court would be the easy path. Criminal charges were a very real option now. I had one more play. I invited them all to meet me, not at home but in a conference room at the law office. When they arrived, they were dressed like they were attending a funeral. I guess in a way, they were. I didn't offer small talk. Just opened a folder, slid a sheet of paper across the table. Eric read it and paled. "You're making us pay it back?" "Down to the last cent," I said. "With 5% interest. And you'll sign this notarized confession admitting what you did. Or the DA gets the file tomorrow morning." Mom looked like she wanted to cry. Dad looked like he wanted to punch a wall. Eric looked like he wanted to vanish. They signed. When it was done, I stood. "I'm selling this house," I said. "You have 48 hours to pack and leave." They all looked up. "But where will we go?" my sister asked. I smiled. "Figure it out. You're smart, right? That's why you never needed me." And with that, I left them in the silence they used to weaponize against me. The house was quiet after they left. Too quiet. I walked through each room, not to reminisce but to reclaim. Every wall, every floorboard, every dented door held echoes of their mockery. I wasn't grieving their exit. I was scrubbing the air clean of their presence. A week later, the for sale sign went up. The offers rolled in faster than expected. The neighborhood was good, the house solid. But for me, it was more than property. It was a crime scene. While the paperwork processed, I moved into a high-rise downtown. Small. Minimalist. Mine. I started sleeping better. Breathing deeper. Laughing again. Then came the calls. Mom first, tearful voicemails. "We're living in a motel. Your father's pride won't let him ask your aunt for help." Then Eric. "I lost the last investor for my app idea. I just need a bridge loan, bro, help me out." Finally, Dad. "We raised you. You don't turn your back on blood." That's when I knew they hadn't learned a damn thing. So I made my final move. I sent them a Christmas card. No money. No gift. Just a photo. It was me standing in front of my new place, holding the deed, smiling with every inch of freedom in my lungs. On the back I wrote, "Thanks for making me strong enough to never need you, Marcus." They'd cast me as the burden. But I'd become the builder. And now, I was building a legacy they'd never be invited into. 3 months later, I got a call from my old neighbor, Mrs. Harper. She was kind. One of the few people who ever treated me like more than a walking wallet. "Marcus, your parents, they're living 2 blocks down now. In a rented basement. I saw your dad yesterday at the dollar store." I didn't say anything. What was there to say? My family had always believed I was disposable. A spare part in their machine. The guy who paid then shut up. They never imagined that I was quietly documenting everything. The forged documents, the emotional abuse, the exploitation. I didn't burn bridges. I simply rebuilt them in a direction they couldn't follow. One morning, I walked into the cafe beneath my new building. The barista smiled. "Morning, Marcus. You're regular?" I nodded. And then, I saw her. Sitting in the corner. Erica. My childhood best friend. The one person who once whispered, "You deserve better," when no one else dared to say it. She stood up. Eyes wide. "Marcus. Hi." She looked at me, like she saw all the battles I'd fought, all the nights I'd stayed up trying to fix what I didn't break. "You look free." I smiled. "Because I am." We sat. We talked. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I had to explain my past. She already knew. And yet she was still here. The chapter with my family was over. But maybe, just maybe, a new one was beginning. And this one wouldn't be built on guilt or obligation. It would be built on choice. It happened exactly 1 year later. Same day. Same hour. I got a text from my mother. Your sister's sick. She needs money. Please help. No apology. No accountability. Just the same pattern, disguise entitlement as emergency. I stared at the message for a long time. Then I opened my bookshelf drawer, the one labeled before. Inside were the copies of forged signatures, drained accounts, and the letter I wrote but never sent. I reread that letter now. One line stood out. The day you see me as more than your ATM is the day I might answer your call. I folded it shut and smiled. Because I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't broken. I had walked through the fire, yes. But I'd also learned how to build something on ashes. A week later, I was invited to speak at a leadership summit. As I stepped on stage, I looked out into the crowd, hundreds of faces, none of them family, yet every single one rooting for me. Erica was in the front row. She mouthed, "Proud of you." I nodded. 'Cause I was proud too. Not because I'd gotten revenge. But because I'd written a new story. One where love wasn't conditional. Where worth wasn't measured in gifts or obedience. Where freedom wasn't earned, it was taken back. So when people ask how I found peace after what they did, I say this. I didn't fight them. I outgrew them. And when they finally realized it, it was too late to catch up. Too late to catch up.